Rachel had her own kids testify against me for custody, bribing them with phones to lie. After I'd raised all 7 for 20 years, only one biologically mine because I refused to let them go into the system like I once did. Until the lies collapsed, tragedy struck, and the judge finally told me, "Get ready, they're all coming home." I still hear her voice, ringing in my ears the moment she thought she'd won. "You did good, honey. Do we still get the money?" That's when I knew this wasn't just about custody. It was about a cold, calculated betrayal that ripped my life apart. 4 years my mornings started the same. Waking up early to cook for 7 kids. Only one shared my blood. The other 6 were my ex-wife Rachel's affair babies. But I knew deep down if I didn't take them in, she'd dump them into the system. And as a foster kid myself, there was no way I could ever let that happen. So, I worked 80 hours a week, sometimes more, just to keep their lives together, to give them something stable. Things were smooth. For a while. Until this huge work trip came up. A big client presentation I'd prepped for 6 long months. I called Rachel. "I just need you to watch them for 4 days, please." She actually laughed. "I have plans." I pushed back. "Rachel, they're your kids." Then she hit me with it, the threat I always dreaded. "Maybe I should call CPS. Tell them you can't provide." She knew exactly what buttons to push. Foster kids, we don't call CPS. Ever. So I tried her family. Every single one. Her mother first. The one with the 6-bedroom house in Westchester. "Oh, David, I wish I could help, but my back, you know. Doctor says no lifting." Her back was just fine for Pilates 3 times a week, just fine for hauling Nordstrom bags, but not fine for her own grandchildren. Next, her rich lawyer brother. "Insurance issues, man. My homeowner's policy doesn't cover other people's kids. Liability thing. You understand." I understood perfectly. Understood that this man, who billed $400 an hour, couldn't spare 4 days for family. 23 members of her family. Every single one had an excuse. These people had boats, summer homes, guest rooms sitting empty. They posted about family first on Facebook, posted pictures of their designer dogs and Halloween costumes. But when their actual family needed 4 days of help, suddenly everyone was busy. Suddenly everyone had insurance concerns. Meanwhile, my kids slept on air mattresses, sometimes eating generic cereal for dinner because I'd spent grocery money on Emma's inhaler. The same Emma who was her grandmother's princess in public, but apparently too much trouble to watch for 4 days. I had no family of my own to call. That's the thing about foster care. You age out alone. So I did what I had to do. I stuffed all 7 kids into that dying Suburban, 5 seats between 7 kids. Drove 8 hours to the conference with the transmission grinding, slipping, threatening to give out completely. Emma held the baby. Jake sat on his brother's lap. The twins shared a seatbelt. Child services would have had a field day. But what choice did I have? That parking lot became our home for 4 days. The hotel room was for clients only, company policy, and it was a dangerous area. So 7 kids sat in a poorly conditioned car while I pitched software solutions to executives. I'd run out every break. Juice boxes, Happy Meals. Emma changing diapers in the back seat because the baby couldn't wait. Other executives stared through the conference room windows, whispered, judged. My boss pulled me aside. "This is unprofessional, David. This reflects poorly on the company." I mumbled, "I'm sorry. I had no choice." He just said, "There's always a choice." Easy to say when you have family. When you didn't grow up knowing that everyone who's supposed to care about you will let you down. I gave my presentation with spit up on my shirt. Closed the deal anyway. Saved my job by a thread. But the damage was done. Rachel had already filed the papers. 3 months later, the custody hearing. Rachel showed up looking perfect. Fresh highlights that cost more than my weekly groceries. A new suit. A lawyer who went to Harvard. I knew she didn't want the kids. She just wanted to prove something. To them or to me or maybe just to herself. Emma was first to testify. Sweet Emma, who called me Uncle David, who made me Father's Day cards even though I wasn't her real dad. He yells at us when we're loud. Her voice was robotic, practiced, memorized. Jake next. The kid I taught to ride a bike. He drives really fast. I don't feel safe. Jake's mom nodded supportively. The same mom who never once offered gas money. Each lie perfectly crafted. Each kid refused eye contact. Emma started crying halfway through. Real tears. But not because of the lies she was telling. Because she knew what she was doing. Kids always know. My public defender tried. Fresh out of law school, exhausted, overworked. These children have been coached, Your Honor. The judge wasn't buying it. 7 kids don't tell the same story by accident. 7 kids don't all lie the same way unless someone made them. I lost everything that day. Walking out was the longest walk of my life. 20 years of being the only stable thing in these kids' lives. 20 years of showing up. 20 years of proving that not all adults abandon you. Gone. That's when I heard it. Jake's mom pulling him aside, whispering, "You did good, honey. Do we still get the money?" I stood frozen on those courthouse steps for maybe 5 minutes. 20 years I'd raised those kids, and Rachel had literally bought their testimony against me. My legs finally started working again, and I walked to my beat-up Suburban. The transmission was still grinding from that conference trip, but at least it started. I drove home to a house that felt wrong without 7 kids running around making noise. 7 empty beds stared at me when I walked through their rooms. The silence made my ears ring after years of constant chaos and shouting and laughing. I sat at my laptop that night and started pulling together every file I'd saved over the past 3 years. Screenshots of Rachel's texts saying she couldn't handle the kids. Voice recordings I'd made when she dropped them at my door drunk at 2 a.m. Photos of the kids' injuries from when she'd leave them alone for days. Bank statements showing I paid for everything while she spent child support on herself. Medical records proving I took them to every doctor appointment while she never showed up once. 3 years of proof I never thought I'd need, but something told me to keep everything. My phone buzzed. Emma's name. I clicked the message and read it 3 times before it sank in. She'd written that she was sorry, and that her mom made them say those things in court. Another text came through. Rachel promised them all new phones and clothes if they repeated what she wrote down. My hand shook as I took screenshots of both messages, and added them to a new folder called Post-Trial Evidence. Then Jake texted, saying his mom told them I was dangerous, and they'd go to foster care if they didn't lie. More screenshots added to my growing pile of proof that Rachel had coached every single word. The next morning, I called my public defender's office. The secretary told me my lawyer had already moved to other cases since mine was closed, and appeals rarely succeeded. She suggested a private attorney. I hung up knowing I couldn't afford a real lawyer on my salary. Work felt like walking through mud. Everyone avoided looking at me after seeing those kids in the parking lot during the conference. My boss sent an email. Performance review moved up to Friday, attendance mandatory. 3 days later, I saw Rachel's Facebook post while eating lunch at my desk. She'd written about being finally free from toxic influence, and how her babies were safe now. Comments poured in from her friends, offering support, congratulating her on protecting her children. I took screenshots of everything, including the timestamp showing she'd posted this 48 hours after getting custody. Not one mention of actually spending time with the kids she'd fought so hard to get back. That afternoon, I couldn't help driving past Rachel's apartment complex on my way home. 7 kids crammed into her 2-bedroom unit, which I knew smelled like cigarettes and cat pee. My Suburban idled outside while I watched through the window. Jake was doing homework at the kitchen table. Emma was trying to feed the younger ones while the twins fought over a toy. No sign of Rachel anywhere. My phone rang. Jake's name. His voice came through as a whisper. His mom had left them alone again. The baby had a fever, and Emma didn't know what to do. My mind raced. If I went there, Rachel could claim harassment. But that baby needed help. And these kids were scared and alone like always. I hung up and dialed 911 instead, requesting a wellness check. I gave the information anonymously, saying I was a concerned neighbor hearing children crying. Then I parked a block away and watched the ambulance pull up with its lights flashing. My scanner app picked up the dispatch chatter. I heard the paramedic report 7 minors with no adult present. The baby's fever was 103, and they were calling for police backup and CPS involvement immediately. 20 minutes passed before my phone rang with a blocked number. The nurse told me I was still the emergency contact for 7 minors brought in by ambulance. I drove straight to the hospital. I found them in the pediatric ward with the baby hooked to and 4 and Emma holding a nebulizer mask to her face while the twins sat scared on a single bed. The nurse writing on her clipboard looked up. Her eyes went straight to the visitor log. Rachel showed up 2 hours later, fresh nail polish still tacky, designer heels clicking on the linoleum, claiming she'd just stepped out for groceries. But the nurse's pen kept moving across that clipboard, documenting everything. A young social worker named Ms. Thompson arrived the next morning. Overloaded briefcase, tired eyes that had seen too much. She took my contact information, asked about the kids' medical histories while Rachel sat in the corner scrolling her phone. Something feels off about Rachel suddenly wanting custody after dumping 7 kids on David for years. Why now? The timing of those Facebook posts about protecting her babies, while she's already leaving them alone again, makes me wonder what her real game is here. Ms. Thompson wrote down every detail about Emma's inhaler prescription and Jake's reading struggles. She gave me this look that said she understood more than she could officially acknowledge. A week later, I was driving past the pawn shop on Maple Street when I saw Jake's bike in the window. The red one we'd built together last Christmas from parts we found at garage sales. The price tag said $50. I knew exactly how it got there. Jake loved that bike more than anything. I bought it back and stored it in my garage, the receipt tucked into my evidence folder. My phone rang during lunch break 3 days later. Emma from her friend's phone after school. She told me her mom sold their tablets for a hair appointment and that I was supposed to pay child support but was being selfish. And that's why they were poor now. I hit record before explaining that every payment went through the court system on time. I asked if she needed anything else, but she hung up when her mom walked in. That afternoon, a certified letter arrived from Rachel's brother, the lawyer, demanding I return items belonging to the children, including bikes, tablets, gaming systems, and birthday presents I'd bought over the years. The letter threatened additional legal action for theft of property if I didn't comply within 10 days. I sat at my kitchen table that night eating generic cereal for dinner, the same kind I used to buy in bulk. The house felt too big and too quiet without 7 kids arguing over who got the last bowl. My grocery bill had dropped $200 a week, but I would have traded every penny to have them back, fighting over the TV remote. Ms. Thompson showed up at my door the following Tuesday for what she called a routine interview, but her questions were anything but routine. She asked about bedtimes, homework schedules, which kid needed glasses, who was allergic to strawberries. I pulled out my phone and showed her the color-coded calendar I still maintain with every appointment and medication schedule. She wrote everything down, asked for copies of medical records I'd kept, took photos of the kids' rooms I hadn't changed yet. Later that week, I was scrolling through social media when TikTok's algorithm showed me Rachel's new account, where she called herself a single mom warrior. In the background of her inspirational video about strength and perseverance, the kids were eating cereal for dinner on the floor, while she filmed herself crying about how hard life was. The comments praised her bravery, sent virtual hugs. I screen recorded every single video from my files. Emma's school email popped up on my phone during a meeting. Subject line: help. Sent during her computer class. She wrote that her mom hadn't signed any permission slips, and she was missing the field trip, and everyone was going except her, and it was my fault they were poor, according to her mom. Attached was a photo she'd taken of an eviction notice taped to their apartment door, dated 3 weeks ago. I pulled up the county court records on my laptop. The eviction proceedings had started 2 months before our custody hearing. Rachel hadn't paid rent in 3 months but had hidden it during court while living in that luxury apartment with the doorman and gym. The record showed she'd been served multiple times but kept filing extensions, claiming financial hardship while posting photos of her new designer purse on Instagram. The screenshot saved automatically to my phone just before Jake's name lit up my screen at 2 in the morning. My heart jumped. The kids never called me anymore since the custody ruling 3 weeks ago. I grabbed the phone. Crashing sounds, glass breaking. The baby screaming in that high-pitched way that meant real fear. Jake was whispering fast about mom's boyfriend being drunk and throwing things at the walls. I pulled on jeans, keeping him on the line, told him to lock himself and the younger kids in the bathroom. My hands shook, putting the address into 911 while I ran to my car, giving the dispatcher every detail Jake whispered to me. The drive took 12 minutes, but felt like hours with Jake describing furniture hitting walls and Rachel screaming back at this guy. I parked down the street when I saw the police lights already flashing outside their building. Two officers were leading some guy in a tank top out in handcuffs while Rachel stood in the doorway wearing a robe. The police report later noted the strong smell of marijuana coming from the apartment, which meant report number 2 for CPS. Rachel kept telling the officers it was just a misunderstanding, that neighbors always exaggerated everything, but they wrote down every detail anyway. I watched from my car as Jake appeared in the window, holding the baby, both their faces pale in the police lights. The next morning I couldn't focus on work emails, so I started cleaning out the closet where I kept old paperwork. My hands found a manila folder from 20 years ago. My foster care records. The social worker had written notes about how I showed remarkable resilience and protective instincts toward younger children in the group home. Reading those words made my chest tight because I'd forgotten that part of myself until seeing it written there. 3 weeks after the trial, I found myself sitting in a church basement with 11 other parents at an alienated parent support group. Every person there had the same hollow look in their eyes, the same stack of court papers in their laps. One woman named Carol had won her case after 2 years of documenting everything, keeping every text, recording every violation. She passed around a binder with tabs for different types of evidence, color-coded by date and incident type. I took notes on my phone about lawyers who actually cared, judges who saw through coaching, investigators who did their jobs right. The coffee tasted like dirt, but I drank 3 cups just to have something to do with my hands. My phone rang during the drive home. Linda Peterson's name made my stomach drop. Her voice was ice cold, saying she knew about my documentation, that Rachel had shown her my text to the children. She said foster kids always have issues, always have problems, and she'd testify about my instability if I didn't stop. The threat sat heavy in my chest. She had money for good lawyers while I had nothing. Monday morning, my boss called me into the conference room where HR was already sitting with a folder open. They talked about team morale, about the parking lot incident being unacceptable, about professional standards and company reputation. 30 days on a performance improvement plan with weekly check-ins and documented goals, or they'd have grounds for termination. That evening, I opened mail to find Rachel had filed for increased child support, claiming I was hiding income from side work. The motion included my exact salary, my bonus structure, details she couldn't have known without someone from my office telling her. Someone had leaked my personnel file, which meant someone at work was helping her destroy me. Tuesday lunch, I sat in my car at the park, eating a gas station sandwich and watching a father push his daughter on the swings. She laughed the same way Emma used to when I taught her to pump her legs, leaning back with her hair flying. Emma wouldn't answer my calls anymore, just sent them straight to voicemail every single time. Wednesday afternoon, Ms. Thompson from CPS knocked on my door without warning for a home inspection. She photographed the kids' rooms with their beds still made, the medicine cabinet stocked with everything they might need, homework stations I'd set up at the kitchen table. She measured the square footage of each bedroom, checked the smoke detectors, tested the water temperature, all while saying it was just for comparison purposes. She took pictures of the chore chart still hanging on the fridge with gold stars Emma had earned the week before court. While cleaning Jake's room that weekend, I moved his bed to vacuum and found torn pages underneath from his journal. His handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear about Mom making them practice what to say in court. He wrote that she said they'd end up in foster care like Dad did if they didn't say what she wanted. He was scared of being separated from Emma and the babies, so he memorized every single lie she taught him. I took photos of every page with my phone before putting them back exactly where I found them. Then I drove straight to Sarah's school to pick her up from the after-school program. The coordinator met me at the door with that look people get when they have bad news. She explained that Sarah had been removed from the program because payment stopped 3 weeks ago. I pulled out my phone and showed her my bank app with every single payment cleared on the 1st of each month. She looked confused, checked her computer again, then showed me the cancellation form that came through their system. Rachel had called, claiming to be my wife, and canceled everything. Even used my social security number somehow. The coordinator said she couldn't re-enroll Sarah without a court order since there was now a dispute about who had authority. Sarah sat in the main office doing homework, while other kids played outside in the program she'd been in for 2 years. The next 4 weeks became a blur of courthouse visits during lunch breaks. The same clerk started recognizing me, sliding forms across the counter before I even asked. Each filing cost $75 I didn't have, but I kept paying them anyway, skipping meals to make it work. One Tuesday my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Emma's number while I was in a meeting. Her voice was shaky, and she talked fast like she was scared someone would catch her. She said her mom told them I was trying to get them taken away, and showed them websites about foster care where kids get separated. She begged me to leave them alone. Her voice cracking at the end before the line went dead. I played it 3 times in the bathroom stall, hearing the fear in her voice, knowing Rachel had put it there. Janet from accounting pulled me aside the next morning by the coffee machine. She whispered that HR had been asking about my remote access logs and timestamps, building some kind of case about me not working full hours. She'd overheard them talking about documenting everything for a termination file. I thanked her and went back to my desk, checking my logs myself and seeing gaps from when I'd been at the courthouse that I'd forgotten to make up. That Thursday, an email popped up in my personal account from Jake, sent from a library computer based on the IP address. He wrote that his mom's boyfriend was moving in and yelled at the twins whenever they cried, and Emma spent all her time trying to keep them quiet. He said, Mom promised it was temporary, but she'd already given the guy a key to their apartment. I forwarded it immediately to Ms. Thompson at CPS, adding it to the growing file of documentation. The weekend hit, and I found myself at Target buying groceries, walking past the kids' clothing section with all the back-to-school displays. My brain automatically started calculating like it always did. 7 kids times $100 each just for basic clothes and supplies. Then I remembered they weren't my responsibility anymore, at least not legally, even though my brain hadn't gotten that message yet. Monday morning my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. It was Carla, the ER nurse from the hospital who'd treated the kids during various emergencies over the years. She said she shouldn't be calling, but she'd seen my kids 3 times in the past month with different injuries. Nothing serious enough for CPS to automatically investigate, but enough to form a pattern. She was mandated to report it but wanted me to know first so I could document everything on my end too. I thanked her and added her information to my growing folder of evidence, which was getting thicker every week. The mail that afternoon brought 3 credit card rejection letters for applications I never submitted. All 3 had my social security number and current address, but Rachel's phone number as the contact. My credit monitoring app showed my score had dropped 100 points from the hard inquiries and late payments on accounts I didn't know existed. Filing an identity theft report meant filing a police report, which meant Rachel would be notified. I did it anyway, adding another document to the pile. 6 weeks after the trial, I caught myself driving past the kids' schools at dismissal time, not stopping or getting out, just checking from a distance. Emma walked with her head down, not talking to anyone. Jake carried both twins' backpacks plus his own while they ran ahead. No sign of Rachel's car in the pickup line. Just the older kids walking the younger ones home alone. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived from Rachel's brother, the lawyer who'd said his insurance wouldn't cover watching the kids. The letter accused me of stalking behavior and threatened a restraining order if I came near the children or their schools again. Attached were 3 photos of my car taken from different angles near the school, time-stamped and everything. Someone had been watching me watch them. The support group met every Thursday in the basement of a church downtown. Patricia ran it, a woman who'd been through 3 custody battles herself. She pulled me aside after my 3rd meeting and handed me a binder. Document patterns, not incidents, she said. I opened it right there and saw charts, timelines, color-coded tabs. She'd tracked everything for months. Every missed pickup, every late payment, every broken promise. I started my own binder that night. 3 months of patterns I already had in my head, now on paper. The other dads in the group knew Rachel's lawyer. Andrew Holloway had beaten 3 of them in court. Same playbook every time, one guy told me. Character assassination first, then the kids testifying, then the crying mother act. But there was a pattern to beat it if you knew where to look. Miss Thompson from CPS showed up for another home visit 2 weeks later. She set her folder on my kitchen table while I got Sarah ready for school. The folder was open and I could see the reports inside. Multiple ER visits for the other kids, school absences going up, neighbor complaints about children left alone. She caught me looking and we locked eyes for a second. I forgot something in my car, she said, and left for exactly 5 minutes. I took pictures of every page with my phone. My credit monitoring went off the next morning. Rachel had applied for emergency assistance and listed me as an absent father refusing support. But she'd messed up and used her real address on the application, not the fake one from court. It was a luxury high-rise downtown, the kind with a doorman and valet parking. I still had the login for the baby's medical records from when I was taking care of him. The portal showed everything. Missed vaccinations, canceled appointments, 3 ER visits that could have been prevented if she'd just given him his medicine. I printed all of it and added it to my growing file. 2 months after the trial, I went to Sarah's parent-teacher conference alone. The teacher asked about the family situation real carefully. Sarah wasn't doing well, grades dropping, always asking when her siblings were coming home. The teacher handed me Sarah's journal entries from class, the ones where kids write about their weekends. Every single one was about missing her brothers and sister. Then Jake called from some stranger's phone. They were at the mall, and Rachel had left them at the food court 3 hours ago. Emma had convinced the security guard to call me instead of the police. I told him to let security handle it and stayed on the phone to record everything. The security footage was damning. Rachel walking out alone with shopping bags while 6 kids sat at a table. She came back 4 hours later claiming she'd told Emma to watch them for just a minute. The security report became CPS report number 5 in my file. The pro bono lawyer from the support group network looked at everything I'd collected. She flipped through the binder, the photos, the reports. This is good, but we need something that shows deliberate harm, not just neglect. I thought about those texts Rachel sent the kids before the trial, coaching them on what to say. Then the call came. At 2 o'clock in the morning. The hospital. Emma had taken a bottle of pills. They'd pumped her stomach, but she was asking for me. Rachel didn't show up for 6 hours because she was at a casino 2 states away. When I got to Emma's room, she grabbed my hand and whispered through her tears. I couldn't lie anymore. The words hung in the air while Emma's monitor beeped and the nurse checked her for. And that's when the hospital social worker walked in with a clipboard and a look that meant business. She wasn't like the CPS workers I'd dealt with before, who'd shuffle papers and make excuses. This one had steel in her eyes, and she sat down next to Emma's bed and started asking questions that made Rachel shift in her chair. Emma told her everything. About the scripts Rachel made them memorize, and the threats about never seeing each other again if they didn't say what she wanted. The social worker wrote it all down, then turned to me and said she was filing an emergency petition because this child was in crisis from coaching and threats. She looked me straight in the eye and told me to be ready to take all 7 kids within 72 hours. Rachel started yelling about her rights, but the social worker just kept writing and said, "The psychiatric hold changes everything." I drove home that night and started getting ready because I knew this was it. 7 beds needed to be set up again, so I pulled the old bunk beds from the garage and assembled them in the rooms I'd kept empty. I called my boss for the first time in 5 years to say I was sick and couldn't come in. He wasn't happy, but I didn't care because those kids needed somewhere safe. I maxed out 3 credit cards at Target, buying sheets and pillows and clothes in the right sizes. Spent $400 at the grocery store, filling the pantry with their favorite foods. Set up the medicine cabinet with labeled containers for Emma's anxiety meds and Jake's ADHD prescription and the twins' allergy medicine. Created homework stations at the kitchen table with fresh notebooks and pencils. Day 3 of Emma's hospitalization, the psychiatrist finally let me visit alone. Emma wouldn't look at me at first, but she grabbed my hand tight like she used to when she was little. She whispered that her mom said I abandoned them because they weren't my real kids, but I never treated Sarah different from them. Her tears soaked through the hospital blanket, and I just held her hand and told her it would be okay. The emergency hearing got scheduled for the next week, and I showed up with my pro bono lawyer carrying 3 inches of evidence we'd compiled. Rachel walked in with Andrew and Linda, all dressed up like they were going to church. Judge Wells sat at the bench, reviewing Emma's psychiatric hold paperwork. Her face got darker with every page. She said this was deeply concerning and called the first witness. Ms. Thompson from CPS took the stand with her own stack of reports. She chose her words carefully but painted the picture clear as day about 7 children who'd been neglected and parentified and abandoned repeatedly. She pulled out report after report she'd filed over the years, all documented and dated. She told the judge that Mr. Smith had been cooperative throughout every investigation, but Mr. Martinez had been less available. Then she added, Rachel's brother sending that certified letter about stalking with photos of the car makes me wonder who was really doing the watching here. Seems like someone had to follow him around to get those shots. Rachel's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled and told Ms. Thompson to continue. The judge then ordered surprise home inspections for both parents that same day. The inspector went to Rachel's apartment first and found an empty fridge with nothing but beer and takeout containers, no beds for 3 of the children who'd been sleeping on the floor. An eviction notice posted on the door for 3 months of unpaid rent. Then they came to my house, where everything was still set up for 7 kids, with labeled medicines and homework stations ready. The inspector took photos of every room and the stocked pantry and the chore chart still hanging on the wall. Back in court, Rachel started losing it during cross-examination when my lawyer asked about child support. She stood up and yelled that, "Those weren't even my kids, so why should I get them?" And she deserved compensation for letting me play daddy all those years. The court reporter typed every word while Andrew visibly winced and tried to get her to sit down. Judge Wells called for order and said she'd heard enough for today. The next day, Jake testified from another room through a TV screen because he couldn't face his mom. His voice stayed steady as he explained how Mom wrote down what they had to say on index cards. He said if they didn't memorize it, she said they'd never see each other again. He called me Dad, then caught himself but kept going and said, "Dad never hurt them. But Mom hurt them by using them like weapons." Week 2 of proceedings. I sat outside during lunch, eating a vending machine sandwich when Rachel's family clustered near the doors, shooting glares. Linda walked over in her designer heels and hissed that I was destroying their family. I looked up at her and said quietly, "I wasn't destroying it because I was saving it." She stormed off, but not before saying, "I'd regret this." The twins' teacher testified through an affidavit the lawyer read out loud about how they'd regressed in potty training and started hitting other kids. They kept asking when Daddy David was coming back, and one drew a picture during art class. 7 stick figures holding hands and 1 stick figure alone in the corner crying. The teacher had kept it and submitted it as evidence with the label the twin had written in shaky letters that just said, "Daddy's sad." The next witness was Carla, the ER nurse who treated the kids for years. She brought 3 boxes of medical records and started pulling out folders. She showed the judge how Emma's asthma got worse every time she stayed with Rachel, because the inhaler prescriptions never got filled. She had photos of Jake's infected cut that Rachel ignored for 2 weeks until it needed antibiotics. The twins had come in dehydrated twice because Rachel forgot to give them water during summer heat waves. Carla counted 17 ER visits where I brought the kids in versus 3 times Rachel showed up, and 2 of those she left before treatment finished. Andrew tried to object, but the judge wanted to hear everything. That same afternoon, cops arrested Rachel's new boyfriend at his apartment on drug charges they'd been building for months. They found texts on his phone talking about the kids being annoying and how he wanted them gone. One message said he'd handle me if I kept interfering. Another talked about accidents that could happen to kids who weren't supervised properly. Rachel stood up in court, claiming she had no idea about his record or the drugs or the threats. The prosecutor showed her lease with both their names on it, dated 6 months ago. 2 days later, my boss got subpoenaed and had to testify about my work situation. Under oath, he admitted someone claiming to be my concerned family member called the office 15 times complaining about my performance. The phone records matched Linda's cell number. He said the performance improvement plan only happened because of those calls, not because of actual work problems. My sales numbers were actually up 20% that quarter. The judge ordered Emma's release from psychiatric hold into my temporary custody, while the hearings continued. I picked her up that Thursday morning and drove her home in silence. She walked through the apartment, touching the walls, the furniture, her bedroom door. She sat on her bed and ran her hands over her old stuffed animals I'd kept exactly where she left them. She looked at me and whispered that I hadn't changed anything. I told her I knew she'd come back. She nodded and didn't say anything else for an hour. The next Monday changed everything. Jake's lawyer produced his tablet in court. Jake had secretly recorded Rachel coaching them on what to say about me. 10 videos over 3 weeks. All dated and time-stamped. Rachel's voice telling them I abandoned them, that foster care would split them up if they didn't cooperate, that they'd never see each other again. One video showed her practicing their testimony with them, making them repeat the lies until they sounded natural. Jake crying in the background, saying he didn't want to lie. Rachel telling him he didn't have a choice. The judge watched all 10 videos while Rachel's face went white. Her family started disappearing after that. Her brother withdrew as her lawyer, citing conflict of interest. Even though everyone knew the real reason, Linda stopped coming to court. Rachel's sister blocked her on social media. By the third week, Rachel sat alone at her table with a court-appointed attorney who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The financial records came next when the prosecutor subpoenaed Rachel's bank statements. She'd received $50,000 from Linda 2 months before filing for custody, the same week she hired Andrew. The deposits matched the dates she'd paid his retainer. The struggling single mother story collapsed when they showed she'd spent $8,000 on clothes and jewelry that same month. Another $5,000 on a vacation to Miami she took without the kids. That evening, I helped Emma with her math homework at the kitchen table, while the other kids were still in foster placement. She asked if they'd all come home, and I told her I was fighting for it. She put down her pencil and said she'd testify again. The truth this time. I made her mac and cheese while she worked on fractions. Ms. Thompson submitted her final report recommending immediate reunification with me for all 7 children. She wrote that I was their psychological parent regardless of biology, that removing them from my care had caused measurable trauma, that the kids consistently asked for me during every interview. She included drawings the younger ones made of our family with me in the center. Her report said Rachel showed no genuine interest in parenting beyond using the children as weapons. The court ordered Rachel's psychological evaluation came back with results that made her lawyer's face drop. The evaluator diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features, and wrote that Rachel used the children to hurt others, rather than caring about their well-being. The report said she was incapable of putting their needs first, and shouldn't have unsupervised contact without extensive treatment that could take years. 3 months passed with supervised visits and court-ordered therapy for the kids while I waited for the final hearing date. The night before court I couldn't sleep, so I walked through my empty house making sure everything was perfect. 7 beds all made with fresh sheets. Each kid's favorite stuffed animal on their pillow. Emma's inhaler on her nightstand next to the unicorn lamp she picked out 2 years ago. Jake's soccer cleat by his door right where he always left them. The twins' matching dinosaur blankets folded at the foot of their beds. Sarah's room with all her art supplies organized just how she liked them. Medications all refilled and labeled in the kitchen cabinet. Breakfast cereal lined up on the counter. 7 bowls stacked and ready. I sat in the living room staring at family photos until sunrise. The courtroom was packed when we arrived for the final hearing. The judge started by reading her preliminary findings, and my lawyer squeezed my shoulder when she said the words. The evidence showed a clear pattern of Rachel using the kids as weapons. Medical neglect when she refused to refill Emma's inhaler during her custody time. Psychological abuse through coaching them to lie. The judge said Rachel had deliberately tried to destroy the bond between me and the children. Rachel's new lawyer jumped up, and that's when she played her last card. She claimed I'd been molesting the kids for years. The judge asked why this was never mentioned in any previous filing. Why Rachel left them with me for 20 years if she suspected abuse. Why none of the children had ever said anything during their therapy sessions. Rachel couldn't answer any of it. The guardian ad litem brought each child in for their victim impact statements. Emma went first, looking straight at the judge and saying she wanted to go home to her real dad. Jake told the court his mom never really loved them. She just used them to hurt me. Even the 5-year-old twins, speaking through their advocate, said they missed Daddy and wanted to go home. Sarah's statement made Rachel start crying when she said her mom was never really a mom at all. The court was taking a recess when Linda suddenly grabbed her chest and collapsed. Rachel started screaming at me that this was all my fault, that I destroyed her whole family. Security had to pull her back when she lunged at me. The paramedics worked on Linda, while the judge watched Rachel completely lose control. The judge noted Rachel's inability to show concern for her mother's medical emergency, only rage at me. After the ambulance left, my co-workers' affidavits were read into the record. Janet from accounting testified about how I never complained despite working 80 hours a week. My manager described the conference incident and how I'd still closed the deal. Janet's affidavit revealed she'd reported our HR department to the labor board for discrimination. The guardian ad litem stood up with her final recommendation. She said the children had one psychological parent, and that was me. Removing them from my care had caused measurable harm to each child. Rachel posed an ongoing risk to their emotional and psychological development. She recommended full custody to me with supervised visitation only for Rachel. When it was time for final arguments, I asked to speak directly to the judge. I told her I didn't need child support or revenge or anything from Rachel. I just needed my kids safe and home where they belonged. They deserved to grow up knowing someone would always fight for them no matter what. My lawyer then dropped a bombshell about Andrew, Rachel's original attorney. The Bar Association was investigating him for a pattern of coaching mothers to alienate fathers. 3 other dads had filed complaints showing the exact same playbook he used. Coach the mom to make false claims, drag out proceedings to maximize fees, ignore what was best for the kids. The final piece of evidence made everyone in the courtroom gasp. Linda had given us a text Rachel sent her after losing the emergency hearing 3 months ago. The text said if she couldn't have the kids, she'd make sure I couldn't either. She'd destroy them before letting me win. Linda chose her grandchildren over her daughter by providing that text to the court. Rachel stood up so fast her chair fell backward and fired her lawyer right there in front of everyone. The third one she'd gone through. She started talking without permission from the judge, saying she'd represent herself. The judge warned her twice, but Rachel kept going, walking around the courtroom like she owned it. She started explaining how she told the kids exactly what to say, practiced with them for hours, promised them new phones and video games if they lied good enough. The court reporter typed every word while Rachel kept digging her hole deeper. She admitted she'd hidden money from me, lied about my income to get more child support, used the kids' social security numbers to open credit cards. Andrew just sat there taking notes while Rachel destroyed herself. The judge called a recess and we waited 3 hours in that courthouse cafeteria. Emma found me at a corner table, sat down without asking. She said she was sorry again. I told her being scared wasn't her fault. We were both scared, but it would be okay now. She drank her juice box while I watched the clock. 2 weeks later, the prosecutor called to tell me they'd filed criminal charges against Rachel. Child endangerment, medical neglect, and something called custodial interference. 5 years if convicted. Linda posted her bail, but wouldn't let her stay at the house. Rachel had to move in with some cousin in Jersey. The final hearing came a month after that. They brought all 7 kids into the courtroom together. Jake held the twins' hands while they walked to the front. Emma stood right beside me. Sarah wrapped herself around my leg like she used to when she was smaller. We looked like what we were, a family. The judge read her decision for 10 minutes, but I only heard the important part. Full physical and legal custody to me. Rachel got supervised visits if she completed parenting classes and got mental health treatment. The kids started crying. Good tears this time. Rachel lost it completely, screaming that we'd stolen her babies, that this wasn't over, that she'd get them back. 2 security guards had to drag her out while she kept yelling threats. Linda walked over to me in the hallway. She said to take care of them and that she was sorry she didn't see it sooner. Then she left. We walked to the parking lot where I'd rented a van since the Suburban finally died 2 weeks before. Emma asked if we could get McDonald's. First time I'd really laughed in months. Told her we could get whatever she wanted. Driving home, Jake said, "You didn't give up on them." I caught his eyes in the mirror and told him I never would. The twins started singing some made-up song about going home. Even the baby, almost 2 now, clapped along to their silly tune. We turned onto our street, and I couldn't believe what I saw. Balloons tied to the mailbox, signs in the yard, cars everywhere. Janet from work was there. Carla, the nurse who'd helped with Emma's panic attacks. Miss Thompson wearing regular clothes instead of her court uniform. The support group parents I'd met during all this mess. People who understood what fighting for your kids really meant. They brought food, set up tables in the backyard, turned our homecoming into something special. That night, all 7 kids piled into my bed for a movie. Emma made popcorn in the microwave. Jake held the baby on his lap. The twins fought over the remote until I took it and picked something everyone could watch. Normal chaos. Beautiful chaos. Our chaos. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Rachel's number. I turned it face down without answering. We were home. The next morning I woke at 5:30 like always and started the griddle heating while the kids still slept. I shaped pancake batter into dinosaurs for the twins. Set out Emma's strawberry syrup and got Jake's bacon extra crispy, just how he liked it. Sarah came down first and grabbed plates without me asking, setting 8 spots at our scratch dining table. The rest stumbled down one by one, the baby in Emma's arms, and we ate together like we had for years. A week later came our first supervised visitation at the community center downtown. Rachel showed up 20 minutes late wearing designer sunglasses indoors. She sat in a plastic chair scrolling Instagram while the younger kids played with blocks on the floor. Emma stayed in the corner with her book, not even looking up when Rachel walked past. Jake watched the clock on the wall and later told me she looked at them for exactly 12 minutes total. Monday morning, I walked into work with Andrew's letter in my briefcase. HR backed down before I even finished explaining, and my boss mumbled something that might have been an apology. Janet from accounting brought me coffee and said she knew I'd win because I was too stubborn to lose. 7 new picture frames sat on my desk, one for each kid. Emma started therapy that Thursday with a woman who specialized in family trauma. She told me Emma was remarkably strong but carried guilt about testifying against me. I got all 7 kids into counseling even though insurance fought every session. Rachel missed the next 3 visitations without calling. Her lawyer filed paperwork saying the drive was too far. Then she moved to Florida with some guy she met online. Linda called me crying, said she was setting up college funds for all 7 kids to make up for not helping before. Jake made the school basketball team in February, and I sat in those bleachers every game with 6 kids cheering beside me. Other parents stared at our loud family, but I didn't care anymore. 3 months after the verdict, the twins started kindergarten and listed me as their dad on every form. The school never questioned it. Emma helped them with homework at the kitchen table, while Jake taught them to tie their shoes with the bunny ear method. My new department offered a promotion with a real raise, enough for actual beds instead of air mattresses. I took all 7 kids to the furniture store and let them pick out their own comforters. At the grocery store, they still wanted the generic cereal even though we could afford name brand now. Emma said it tasted like home. One night, Sarah crawled into my lap and asked why her mom didn't love them. I explained that some people's brains get sick in ways that make them unable to love, right? That it wasn't about the kids being lovable. She looked up at me with those big eyes and asked if I loved them. I told her more than all the stars, the same thing I'd said every night for 20 years. Sunday morning, I woke to laughter from downstairs. Emma was teaching the twins to scramble eggs, while Jake helped Sarah with a 100-piece puzzle on the living room floor. The baby toddled over with a picture book and climbed into my lap. 7 kids who weren't supposed to be mine. One choice that was never really a choice at all. I headed to the kitchen and started making pancakes for 8, just like every morning, just like I always would. Some things are worth every fight, every sacrifice, every sleepless night. Family isn't about blood or papers or what some judge decides. Family is showing up every single day, making breakfast for 8, and meaning it when you say, more than all the stars.